Cheers, everyone. Sleepy Reader here with a kind of a hybrid video, I guess. A bit of a haul, or quite a bit of a haul of mostly recent comics I've picked up in the last few weeks. You know, current-ish or current comics that I have not read yet, because apparently I haven't been reading as many comics as I thought I had. So I only have I made a little pile of comics to give my thoughts on, and there aren't very many of them. And actually, there are very few that I have a lot of thoughts to give on. So I'm going to do that quickly and then show you a bunch of stuff that I hopefully will get around to reading sometime in future weeks. Read Paper Girls recently. It was good, more good stuff. I think, as maybe Jared Osborne or someone else has pointed out, I guess this isn't about to wrap up. Or maybe it was Ghost Critic. I would like him. I would like it to wrap up soonish, but they've added some new twists, so I think it's going on further. But I will, of course, stick with it. And I do look forward to someday just rereading the whole thing all at once. But I am glad to get it in single issues because I feel like I can enjoy the Cliff Chang art better that way. Although if it ever comes out in a really gigantic, super well bound hardback someday, I might rebuy it. It is the month of Chrome over at DC. I actually think their Chrome covers are relatively tasteful compared to the Chrome of the 90s. I kind of like them, or at least some of them. This one wasn't bad. It's just mostly silvery. Hawkman continues to be really good. Same story as always. A lot to do because of Brian Hitch. Just seems to be a sweet spot for Brian Hitch. The story by Vendetti is good. Hitch may be contributing to that, I kind of wonder also. But the only downside of this issue might have been that there were some long phases of just talking about things between the Atom and Hawkman, although I didn't mind that too much. It did seem like there might have been a way to give them more action to do together, although we head into action towards the end of the comic book. It's a visual treat. I think there's a different colorist on here than before. Jeremiah Shipper, I'm not sure. The coloring is still good. It's hard to tell because now we've switched over to the more matte paper, if the colorist is in the process of getting used to that, because I think the color could be even better, although it's not bad at all. This one was a really cool Chrome cover. I like that Chrome red with the Chrome silver. Why am I still getting damage? I can't really explain. It's $2.99. I have a soft spot for the old Marvel Hulk. The very simple Hulk stories of the Bronze Age, basically. And this captures a lot of that tone. It's like with even less layers than perhaps those Bronze Age Hulks had. But great art by Aaron Lopresti in the last few issues. I just keep getting it. I'll probably drop it I think in a few months, all of these last remaining $2.99 ones are going to turn to $3.99, and then I'll think more heavily on it. But, I don't know, dumb pleasure, I guess. What should be a dumb pleasure, Supergirl, not necessarily dumb, but I mean a fun pleasure. My daughter and I were really psyched about this as Supergirl kind of goes on an adventure off into space in a spaceship with Krypto. But the last few issues have been on Oa, and there have been some interesting twists, especially the role played by Mogo, the living planet here. But it feels in some ways, as I suspected all along, that the writer is not putting a lot of effort into it. I think this one is actually an example of perhaps the colorist not fully tuned in on the new matte paper as well. It's funny, though, that Damage was not on the new matte paper. I'm not sure if they're just slowly moving everything over, or if the shiny paper is actually cheaper, and because this is a $2.99 comic, they've kept it on the shiny paper. No idea. I don't know if I'm an issue behind on Doctor Strange or if this is the most current one, because I get Doctor Strange through the mail, and every once in a while they do get bent, and this one is a bit bent, but I don't really care too much. I pay about half price for these. If anyone wants digital codes for Doctor Strange and a few other Marvels, let me know. Pardon my gulping. This was fun. We actually learn a lot in this issue. I do have to say that it's a bit of a jolt to suddenly be back on Earth so quickly. I thought there would be a longer sojourn off of Earth and a more complicated story that would develop out of it between Doctor Strange and this alien woman that has become his companion, although she's still his companion at the moment. So we'll see. A welcome return to this ghost dog, which I think was introduced by Donny Cates. Really love him. So another fun comic book. Wish it went a little deeper on me on an emotional level. Not too deep. I don't need to go too deep emotionally, but a little more would have been nice. But still fun. I'm not sure what to make of Black Hammer: Age of Doom as drawn by Rich Tommaso. I actually really like Rich Tommaso's art. And he seems to have two styles. One is like pure on Tintin, and the other is the style here, which feels a little different than that. Is kind of a mixture of the lines and the shadow, and also just letting the color or lack of color in some cases do a lot of the work. I think I was really bothered by, is it Captain Weird or Dr. Weird, about the way he drew Dr. Weird. It just didn't seem at all like I remembered him from the other artists doing him. But other than that, this was kind of a fun story. It is Jeff Lemire kind of buying time. Is the story pretty much over? So he's sending characters off on little side routes so that he can stretch it out more. Particularly since it's only issue 6, although it's really issue 21 or something like that, because they just restarted renumbering in the middle. But there's some cool elements of here. It's very meta, because it literally talks about characters who have been cast out of their stories. They're in this limbo. But it has a great final splash page that I really want to show you, but I guess I better not in case you haven't read this issue yet. And I think that splash page that final reveal on the last page made me accept this issue more. And I guess this is a little bit old, but I picked it up just yesterday or the day before, over the weekend, and Saturday, I think. And because I'd heard someone mention it, and I really liked the other Ahoy comic I read. So when I saw it, I grabbed it. Maybe issue 2 is already out or about to come out. The art in here is great. It's a very odd, humorous sort of joke or jape on the idea of going to heaven. Where it's leading, if it can... I'm really enjoying reading it, but I wonder, can it maintain itself for more than, it's hard to imagine this is a story that can maintain itself for more than about, 4 issues. But if they can make something more out of it, that's great. I don't think it's intended as a critique of religion or anything. It's more a goof on a certain kind of character. There is no one really to root for here. It's more like you're laughing at the main character. And, I still can't bring myself, even though it's Grant Morrison, to read these text pieces, these bits of text fiction by Grant Morrison. I just look at them quickly and they turn me off. And also maybe the way it's laid out, the way it's typeset and everything is not very appealing. So anyway, this one, I almost thought I could read High Heaven to my daughter, but then this one that looks like a kiddie cartoon, #Danger, has some pretty harsh language in it that I don't think my wife would appreciate me reading to my daughter. So I'm not going to go there. But anyway, Higher Heaven is kind of a cool comic. Really kind of the coolest thing I picked up by accident. I was sometime this past weekend, I just hit up a couple of different comic book stores that I don't normally go to, and I stumbled across this new Boom book, Sparrowhawk. It's going to be just 5 issues. I flipped it open because this is one of those painted covers. I wasn't too keen on that. But when I saw the artwork on the inside with lots of these flat-ish colors, and I just love this artwork. So I had to pick it up and give it a try, and it was a really good story, actually. I'm guessing it will come out as a paperback to be sold to the young adult readers market. Because I looked up this writer, Delilah S. Dawson, amongst other things, writes young adult novels. And I think she also writes those paranormal romances and things like that. But this is a really cool story about a half African woman who, in England, in the kind of Jane Austen days, I think, the love child of a captain who comes back and brings the love child with him to his family, to be raised by his family in England, including his wife, who gets sucked in a mirror into fairy. There's certain things like, why her? Why was she sucked into the mirror? And, why doesn't that happen to everybody? Was there something special about this mirror? Was there something special about her? All of that was unclear. But other than that, it had like these really cool creatures in fairy. So yeah, if what I've just said sounds interesting, this I think is going to be a great 5-issue read. I read The Witching Hour. I haven't read the rest. I'm getting all the books that interconnect through this Witching Hour series, but this is incredibly talky, and a lot of it feels like padding. I still enjoyed it roughly, again, because I like the paranormal kind of characters in the DC universe, but it does feel like, it definitely feels like they're taking a story and padding it out. So if you're reading just Wonder Woman or just Justice League Dark, you're kind of being screwed a bit by an event, a mini event maybe. And it's a bit frustrating how easy some of the bad guys have it. They can just do whatever they want and control reality, I guess. Speaking of controlling reality, Tom King's been at it. I have to confess, I read this as an illegal digital upload, and I didn't get too into it. But then I heard this podcast that broke down the book. Maybe I can link it down below, by Peter Rios, and I really loved it, so I decided to buy a copy and reread it and re-listen to his podcast. Certainly the art is a lot of fun. I'm not a big fan of game-changing events, and which this, I guess, promises to be, but we'll see. Okay, so let me just show you a bunch of stuff that I've been buying. I don't think I have it all here. One of the stores I went to had a dollar box. So I got a bunch of things out of that dollar box, including this Star Trek comic. Just couldn't resist the painted cover, basically. Even if that's all I like about it, it's worth it for $1 for me. I'll probably enjoy the ads, too. I haven't looked at the art on the inside yet. I have looked at the art on the inside, and I blocked the memory of it. It's okay art. It's in a certain style that doesn't seem ideal for Star Trek, I guess. There was this Eclipse series that I'd never heard of. I think this is the middle of the story, so I'll have to look for the rest of the issues somewhere else, or when I have more time. It's by Bo Hampton, who's a name I remember, and the art looks really cool, but I can't remember why I know the name Bo Hampton from back in the 80s. Let's see. And then in the same dollar box, I just got some newish comics. The Sandman, The Dreaming was already in there, #1. So I thought, well, for $1, I'll sample it. I'll probably still just read it and trade, but And then the first 2 issues of New Lieutenants of Metal, which is really something I probably should have put on my pull list, but now I've got issue 1 and issue 2 for $1, so I'll check those out and see if I should put them on my pull list. Because Joe Casey sometimes works for me and sometimes doesn't. Metal often works for me, and the artist Ulysses Farinas is a kind of indie-ish artist that I've enjoyed quite a bit. I think he did a comic for Oni that I liked quite a bit, and I can't remember the name of it right now. Motro. I think he was involved in Motro. Oh, from In Stock Trades, I got My Heroes Have Always Been Junkies. The sad thing here is it's not colored by Elizabeth Breitweiser. The coloring looks fine. It's by Sean Phillips' son, I think. But still, I really was into that Elizabeth Breitweiser coloring. I gather her husband is involved in the Comicsgate, so there's been some rumors that maybe that's why she won't be doing the color with them, but I hope that's wrong. I'm almost sure that's wrong. I bet we'll see more Elizabeth Breitweiser. Also in that haul, I got very cheap copies of Art Ops, which I always meant to pick up in trades. I don't know if there's a third trade or this covered the whole thing about paintings coming alive and secret agents who dealt with the paintings that came alive, the famous pieces of art. Again, in my wandering through multiple comic book stores this past weekend, I ended up picking up this What If Flash Thompson became Spider-Man. I looked at it at several comic book stores and didn't buy it, and finally I did buy it. I wonder if my friend Matt has picked this up. It might be a fun thing to talk about, maybe this and a few other what ifs. At the same shop, I picked up this Errand Boys, which is a recent-ish Image comic that I missed the first time around. But when I looked inside, I couldn't resist the art. It reminds me a bit of a modern-day Alex Nino. I mean, not quite as extreme as Alex Nino, but there's something to the art. Or there's also another Filipino artist that this reminded me of, and I can't remember his name right now. Anyway, so for the art alone, I decided to pick it up. I have never heard of any of these creators, Kirkbride and Katuris, DJ Kirkbride, Nikos Kotisis, and he did the coloring too, so that's cool. I think we're going to see the age of, artists often do the pencils and inks now. A lot of them, more and more, are going to do their own coloring. Speaking of which, I didn't find these on the racks of my nearby comic book shops, but since I was going further afield, I found at least 2 of the 3 Michel Fiffe Blood Strikes, and I just have grown to love Michel Fiffe's weird retro indie art, which reminds me often of some kind of whacked out Steve Ditko or I don't know what else, underground comics and all kinds of things. But he loves the 80s and 90s, I guess, comics, and so this is, he got Rob Liefeld to let him do a comic of Rob Liefeld characters. I hope it sold well enough. And he does his own coloring, which is he has a very unique color. You can almost recognize right away that it's Michel Fiffe just from the coloring. So looking forward to diving deeper in those. I guess I'll read them without finding the part 1. Picked up Archie Halloween Spectacular. We got art in here by Dan Parent. Oh, story by Dan Parent and art by someone else. But anytime Dan Parent's involved with Archie, it seems to go very well. And so I'm going to have a lot of fun reading these with my daughter. And if she won't read them with me, I'll read them by myself. I'd heard about Mark Russell, the writer of Flintstones, doing Lone Ranger, and lo and behold, there it was sitting in front of me again, because I went to 3 stranger to me comic book stores this past week. Very cool cover. The artwork inside is not so much to my taste, and I started reading it and didn't immediately get into it, but I'll give it a go. I think unless I love it by the end of this issue, it'll probably be something I'll just wait for and trade. Mark Russell seems to deliver, even sometimes like in Snagglepuss, where I doubted him for about the first 4 issues. But I'm not quite ready. I don't know. There's something kind of depressing about going back to the Wild West and talking about what it really was like, with these problems, in this case between the cattlemen and the sheepmen, basically, which is historically a very important part of the settling of the West, and not really that pleasant of a part, even though it didn't involve wiping out Indians so much. Invisible Dark. This was on my pull list. I can't remember what description I read about it that made me decide to put it on my pull. I have to say the art isn't as good as I would hope for from an Image comic. It looks workable, so hopefully the story is good. I had picked up the first issue of this 1975 comic and thought the art was really cool. The story was fun, but I didn't feel like I had to put it on my pull or anything. But on a whim, when I saw this, because I felt like I didn't have enough to read, when I saw this cover, I decided to get another issue of it. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I wonder if the artist and no, there's a separate artist and colorist here. Ian McEwan, Ian Maysewan, Ian McEwan, I think, and Brad Simpson is the colorist. But it can't be the British novelist Ian McEwan, I don't think. That was the joke I failed to make there very well. I've read about half of Cursed Comics Cavalcade. I enjoyed it. I think, as others have said, lots of great art. I'd say everything I read, the story was okay. I didn't hate any of the stories. I wasn't madly in love with any of them either. I'm always wanting to believe in the short story anthology for comics. But it's hard to find a good one. Hard to find many of them at all. The last part of She Could Fly. So for some reason, I'm reluctant to read this last issue. I'm nervous about it ending. Looks like maybe she flew and fell here. And here we go. There's part 2 of the Witching Hour with Wonder Woman, and part 3 with a chrome cover. That's pretty good. I like it. Not the greatest art, but I kind of like the effect of the colors. The Weatherman, number 5. I keep putting this towards the bottom of the pile, I think just because Weatherman's gotten a bit more confusing, and I feel like it's going to take more mental energy to read, not something I can read just before I go to bed. I picked up, talk about, is this brand new or has this been out for a while? I think also a heavy metal themed comic by Daniel Warren Johnson. Is Mike Spicer the colorist? Yes, so Daniel Warren Johnson still is getting a separate colorist. But anyway, I'm curious about this. I think that is the Murder Falcon a fictional character from some heavy metal songs who appears in real life and fights battles? I don't know. Quantum Age. This is one of my favorite comics, or a favorite. So I'm surprised I haven't jumped on that and already read it. Birthright. Another one. Love Birthright. Always covers not quite working. And then the interior art is awesome. It feels like after a long hiatus, this is coming out very quickly again. Couldn't resist picking up Lucifer. I think partially because the Fiumuras, the artists, were on it. I love the original Mike Carey Lucifer comic. They're now calling it, part of the Neil Gaiman Sandman universe. But hopefully it will stand alone. I put it on my pull list sight unseen just because of the artists, Max Fiumura and Sebastian Fiumura. Not sure who does what, or if they draw separate parts. And I can't find the credits. Savage Dragon. Really looking forward to this. I liked the last issue a lot. The issue before, I kind of complained, what if this is just going to turn into a whole bunch of sex scenes all the time? But then he actually dealt with that issue very nicely in the previous issue. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next. I think everyone's after his blood, right? My one thing is I still, too much of it looks like a kid-friendly comic. And I have to keep it way out of my daughter's reach. The New World, looking forward to this. That cover's a bit different. Doesn't look like the artists. Doesn't look like Brad Moore art on the cover. But maybe he's just using a different style, or maybe they did get a different cover artist. Oh, they say he did that color. If it's cover A or B. Yep, it's cover A. Okay, well, anyway. I'm really looking forward to this. Again, mostly for the art. I mean, the story's good, but the art is what really makes this a unique, amazing comic book. Curse Words, another favorite. Always have fun every issue. Cemetery Beach, I think I've decided to get it because they make it look like they are all planned out. It'll be coming out regularly up to March 13th. They even show the dates because that's one of my issues with Warren Ellis of whether the story will end or whether you'll have to wait a year to read the last issue. So I'm in it again. I really like this artist, of course, and the first issue was a lot of fun, reminiscent of some of the other work he's done recently, that Ellis has done recently. And finally, Oblivion Song, which is another really solid book that I'm enjoying a lot. So I got a lot to read. As I went through it, I wish I could just stop and read right now and not do anything else. Oh, but there's more. So another thing I did while wandering from comic book store to comic book store, I got this craving to own more True Believers. So I picked up a whole bunch of True Believers from the different comic book stores I went to. And a number of them were what ifs, which I think is what led me to buy that current what if about Flash Thompson. What if Dr. Doom had become a hero? Is there already a what if where Flash Thompson becomes Spider-Man? I'm surprised there wasn't. What if Spider-Man had rescued Gwen Stacy? And this one, I'd never read this one before, and it has Gil Kane artwork in it, which to me is a wonderful thing. The Punisher, this one pains me because I had a copy of this when I was 11 years old. And, wish I had it now. I did not appreciate that the Punisher would become that big of a hero. I remember loving this cover, which looks like a Gil Kane cover. But I don't remember thinking that I would see the character of the Punisher a whole lot again. Iron Fist, I think this will contain his origin story, which is also Gil Kane art, Roy Thomas writing. Now, I think I may have borrowed a friend's copy of this when I was 11, but I'm not sure. I have never read this issue. I know a lot of people think it's a big deal. True Believers number one. Everyone is a True Believers number one. So, this will be fun for me for $1. Probably could pick it up for $1. No, I guess not this one. You can't pick up for $1. Every other Spider-Man by Todd McFarlane you could pick up for $1. Anyway, funny that they're promoting this as Carol Danvers. Maybe this is the first appearance of Carol Danvers. She appeared in this issue of Captain Marvel back when he had the green outfit. But hey, I don't think I read that one. Can't resist anything with Giant Man. It says Ant-Man and the Wasp, but I like Giant Man more than Ant-Man. Although Ant-Man's pretty cool. This is very early Jack Kirby art. I might have the original of this, but I picked it up anyway. The marriage of the Pyms. If it works out. I can't remember if it worked out. First appearance of Dr. Doom. I think this has that great pirate sequence, which I love. I think this one may be inked by Joe Sinnott, the first time Joe Sinnott inked Kirby on Fantastic Four. And then he was to come back for Greater Glory. Speaking of Greater Glory, here's the wedding of Reed and Sue. That's not inked by Sinnott, though. I think it's inked by, The Dread of Vince Coletta. Another What If, this one by John Byrne, and I don't think I've ever read this one before, so I'm looking forward to that. And it looks like prime John Byrne artwork. More Ant-Man and the Wasp, this time, again, Giant Man on the cover. A lot of promoting of Ant-Man and the Wasp. So, and finally, what if the alien costume had possessed Spider-Man? I don't fully understand why they put out these what if, not these what, why so many of these true believers. I mean, they're a great deal, and I think some of the shops really use it as a way to draw in the casual consumer with little kids who don't want to spend a lot of money. But do these do a good job of promoting Marvel's current comics and stuff, or are they promoting trades? Are they about to bring out an omnibus of what-if stories? If they haven't, they should. So I don't fully understand the True Believers #1, what the gimmick behind it is. Okay, I have to go pick up my daughter at school. I'll talk to you all again soon. Bye-bye.